Hi, Pauline. How are you?
Hi, Anne. I'm good. How are you?
I've been good. Not bad.
That's good to know. Yay.
So, do you have any idea what we are going to talk about today?
Yeah, so we're going to continue our episode series on PCOS and how it is something that's linked to childhood maltreatment. So last episode we kind of saw a few research that connected these two, and it was pretty fascinating to see how our body, as a defense mechanism, uh, doesn't prioritize pregnancy when you're emotionally distressed. So for you to kind of have like a healthy reproductive life, you need to first prioritize your emotions. So for people who say that, reproduction is something that happens parallelly, there's no psychological, factors that are involved. It's a lie. It's a myth. Right. So if as long love is related to, sex, love is related to pregnancy. So I think we're going to continue talking more about it, and we're going to talk about how this connects to specifically emotional abuse today.
Yeah, I remember. I think the last episode we kind of ended with a very hard conversation with our listeners. We told them, not to get discouraged or scared, that, things are difficult. We know that, around us, there is a lot of problems related to these abuse that we've been through. But we encourage them to really look into their body and look into their relationship. And even if it's like unhappy at the moment and uncertain at the moment, they can do something about it. And I think that was something that we left our listeners with, and that's something that we want to continue this series as well.
Yeah, so one of the things that we want to kind of reiterate is to look at your relationships right now. If you find that there are things that's going wrong with your body, for instance, if your immune system is low, one thing that you should look into is your food, your exercise routine. Yes, all that's there. But another important thing that you need to look into is your relationships. And ironically, right, if you had like a childhood where you never really got treated right. You never got the attention that you deserve. You somehow find yourself in similar relationships in your adulthood as well. But except this time, your body reacts to it. So the first question that you need to ask in terms of like your your physical health is something related to your emotional health. Why is it that these relationships keep repeating? Like as the people change in my life, but then the kind of internal characteristics that this person has doesn't change. I just meet different people, like the same person in different bodies.
Yeah, I think this is something like, we might allow these relationships, right? We see these patterns, and even when you practice as a psychologist, you see these patterns in relationship that they have the same kind of person in different relationship, and they keep repeating it, and their body keeps giving signs that this is not right for them, this is not good for them, but they consciously or unconsciously they keep allowing it, right? Even though they are abusive.
Yeah. So I think this episode is specifically for people who say things like, why do these things only happen to me? Why do these things keep happening to me? If you are one of those people, you should listen to this episode right here.
Yeah, and I think really, I as a, I also want to know, like, why is this thing happening to only some of them, right? Other people are able to take control of their body, they are able to take control of their relationship. If they want to be assertive, if they want to like stand by their values, they are able to do it. But then why is it that only some of the people are not able to break this pattern? That's something that the listeners want to know, and I also want to know.
Right. So what you're basically talking about is this autopilot behavior, right? Where you don't know things, you just kind of go with the flow. And going with the flow often means that you kind of repeat the same things over and over again. You meet the same kind of people. We call them, like, oh, why do I keep meeting snakes? Why do I keep meeting, these people, right? But the question is really coming down to you, right?
So you're
Why do
saying
you
I'm the problem, like we are the
Yes.
problem.
Yes, it's always us, right? We create the world around us. So the question that each of us should ask ourselves is, what is it that I'm avoiding internally that I let this happen? Because see, anytime you're in like a relationship that is wrong for you, the early signs are always early. Like it's probably the first day you met that you felt off, but then you shut down that voice and say, no, you're overreacting. Give them another chance. No, this is not really something that you should be feeling. This is how everyone is. You kind of give them excuses and you shut down your own feelings. And I think this is how I would define emotional abuse. If you are ignoring your feelings or if you are shutting down your feelings when they come up, right? That is something that you should consider as an abuse to yourself. So emotional abuse is not not just what others do to us. It's also the things that we do to ourselves where we say this is not real. You
Okay, I
gaslight
have a
yourself.
question.
Yes.
So, say if you're saying that, these things occur in relationship and we need to stop it, right? But for some people, they cannot be in a relationship unless it's sort of like this. Do you get it? Like they do not like calm and secure relationship. They feel that these push and pull, which I've seen in many of the couple session or many of the young adults, they like this push and pull in relationship where it's definitely abusive, definitely toxic, definitely they are like going forth between, is this good for me, is this not good for me, why is he doing this? So people somehow are comfortable being in there. So what do you think that they can do about it?
I think the reason that again happens is because of childhood, experiences where early on in my life, I learned that I don't deserve good things unless I work hard for it and earn it. So I can't exist and feel good about my life. So for these people, they like the chase. They like, it when they have to perform for the love of another person. So I think, again, there's a reflection that's needed from our side where we ask ourselves, why can I not rest? Why do I think I don't deserve love for just who I am? Why do I need to prove myself before I earn someone else's love?
Hmm. So, this whole chase that's happening, do you think there's a way for anybody to stop the chase? Because it's
Right.
been done over a lot of years, it's been building up, and they're only used to this pattern. They don't know how else love would feel. So, for somebody who doesn't know how the actual healthy relationship would feel, how would they, what kind of a reference point would they have?
I think all of us should start with this one point where you realize that only you as a person can 100% know you as a person. No other person can know you like you do. You know your thoughts, you know your feelings, you know if you're hungry right now or not. The person sitting next to you, the person who's closest to you, cannot know that, right? So this is actually a concept that was introduced by this philosopher named Miranda Fricker. She talks about two forms of injustice that kind of uh, basically take away the power from us, right? So the first one she says is testimonial injustice, where when people tell us things that are not true about us, we kind of blindly take it. We don't let them, we don't question it. We don't, like look at reality. We don't do like a reality check with ourselves. We don't check for, are they saying something that's real? Instead, we just immediately take it in as real, right? So this is something you would see women doing often. Women are very quick to become insecure. Can you
And
like
where
relate to
does
this?
this is coming from? Like, why are we quick to become insecure? Is it like not in male? Are they not the same like us?
I think for men it's for different things, but like for instance, for men it would be something to do with like career, if the amount of money they can make, because this is kind of how patriarchy trains them, right? But if you
Hmm.
told a man, why you're not able to feel as much as why can't you show empathy, a man is not going to take that very personally because if he lacks empathy, he's more masculine, and that's like a compliment for him,
Hmm.
right? But then if you told a girl, right, like like for girls, there are so many levels of like criticism that you
Yeah.
can throw, right? And it makes us question. Like a small example would be the way that we question mothers. right? The minute the mother is taking care of herself or she wants to kind of step out of the house, let's say this is like a mother of a 3 month old baby,
Mm.
she is going to be kind of, really criticized so much, because how can you as a mother do it? There are so many forms, and the worst part is this mother would know that she is a human being as well and she needs life outside, but then she would end up feeling like, okay, maybe they are right, maybe I am a bad mother,
Mm.
right? So this is called testimonial injustice. This is the first thing that we need to kind of rectify. So if you are listening, how many times have you denied your own like actual need and said, no, the others are right. I shouldn't have these needs. Even things like the need for attention we have, right? Where sometimes we feel like texting a friend just because we're like requiring attention, like, hey, do you miss me? Like, hey, do you remember me? This is also like, an indication that we have needs, but then most of the time we're ashamed of this. But we don't have to be. We are human and it's okay for us to have those needs. So when people say, call you names or whatever, think for yourself. That's that you don't have to accept someone's claim about you just at face value. You
So
can always say,
only one thing comes to my mind is that I've heard this from a lot of people is that this particular person knows me better than I know myself. Have you heard this sentence? Like she
yes.
knows me better, he knows me better, and this is something that recurrently happens. And what do you have to say for this? Because I think it's very common also in a Tamil culture, in many of the friendships, that you put the other person on top over you.
But I feel like that's like a textbook abusive relationship, because what you're doing is you're giving them the power to ruin you.
Mm.
Right? Like this is a person who's gonna tell you, like, let's say, we've all had that friend, right? A friend who tells us, don't do your hair like this, don't wear these clothes. After a point, you kind of say, oh, like initially it's like, oh, she reminds me of my mother. My mother cares about me the same way, right? But later it becomes, oh my God, you're not my mother. Stop suffocating me.
Mm.
So I think like when early on in our lives, when we are used to giving the power away to someone, like in this case, like to our mothers, as you grow older, you kind of feel like giving away the power too, because that's your pattern, right?
Mm.
So when we talk about testimonial injustice and rectifying it, we are saying you need to take that power back where you set the standard for yourself. You basically define who you are. You don't let others define you for you, even though it's easier. Like, you don't have to think too much about it. Oh, you think I'm talkative? Okay, then I'm talkative. You think I'm lazy? Then I'm lazy. But no, only I get to decide what I truly am, because I know me better than anyone else could know me,
Mm. And I
right?
think even
And
if you
yeah,
don't know yourself, I think, I mean, it's something that a lot of people also still struggling to know themselves. They don't really know why they do the way they do, why they react, what do they like, what makes them happy, what makes them sad. And I think that's one step that we have to stop this testimonial injustice, as you were saying, is to know yourself. I think.
exactly. Right. So this brings me to the second injustice that Miranda Fricker talks about, which is hermeneutical injustice, which basically talks about what you just said. If you don't have the language to describe the injustice or the needs that you're like having, right? There's no way for you to communicate that. So only when I know myself, I can confidently not listen to what other people have to say about me. And this is where, it's very important that we women read, we women get educated, we women talk to other women and men, right? So we need to be out there in the world. We need to be there on the internet. We need to kind of be everywhere. So we develop the right language to talk about what's happening in our lives. So even, words like the fancy pop psychology words, right? Where we talk about love bombing or we talk about, various other things. I think having these sort of phrases in our vocabulary helps us talk about our problems more. Like probably 20 years back, right? We were very shy to use words like neglect, abuse, because these were like big words,
Mm.
right? Like, no, I can't say that. Like, oh, I feel bad. But now, because of, the way that education's changed, we're able to confidently and comfortably say, you know what, I'm feeling emotionally neglected in this relationship. I need attention. And the wonderful part is I don't feel guilty for saying this. And the reason, again, I have the language, I have the capacity to understand myself so much more. And I think this is something that we need to do for ourselves instead of sitting and waiting for someone else to come and tell us, no, you have to feel this way because you're this, because you're that. I think you need to kind of figure out where your feelings, your thoughts are coming from.
I have a doubt. So, say we are talking about knowing yourself, knowing the language, and using the language, right? But then, say there is this some people who kind of take it a bit extreme. Like they say that, they kind of victimize and use a lot of diagnosis to themselves. Like, I am like this, I am very, I have a anxiety, I have a personality disorder, like big words, like like I remember a person coming and telling me that I have derealization, a lay person saying that I have derealization. So do you think having this sort of a language would kind of make them more down, like more victimized, and get into that that place of that I am like this and I can't do anything about it, more in a helpless way? Would that can that happen?
I think when people use these labels, I think it's a desperate attempt to be understood. Right. I won't really say that person is, harming themselves. I think that's a way that they're trying to seek out help, seek out connection. So, like, for instance, let's say a person is saying, I have anxiety or I have depression. There's a high chance they don't have it. Right. But then that also, like, if I'm in a relationship with them, if I'm friends with them as well, right, my my love language would be curiosity. I would ask them, why do you say that? What do you mean? What happened? And I think all of us just look for this in people, right? Where we want people to ask us questions. And when you are asked questions, you get to kind of answer them. And as you answer them, you realize who you are. You realize what's happening with you. The answer is within you. As cliche as that sounds, the answer is within you. So I think, one thing that you need to look for in a person when, you're looking for healthy relationships is this wonderful quality of curiosity. Like, are you willing to study me in a very accurate fashion? Like, I know who I am, but are you also willing to like know who I am in a systematic way? Not like, I talk to you for 2 hours and say, I already know you. I
Hmm.
cannot know you. You've lived a whole life.
I
So
think
every
this
day,
is really important. Like it really, so it makes me think of my friendships. Okay. Like, a lot of friendship over the years, which some are there, some are not there. And I think one of the common thing they come to me is that they say that I know you, even if they've s- last spoken to me like 5 years before, and they come 5 years later and they say, I know you, I understand you, I know why you're doing the way you do. And then that just makes me feel much less least understood from that friendship or from that relationship. And on the other hand, I have people like, who are interested in knowing what is going on, and they ask me these questions and they stay with me and tell me what is happening. Like they don't assume things, right? So when people assume, I think that's when we kind of give in, like, okay, this is what people think of me, maybe I am that, like you said. And I think this comes to this question, like, I think the kind of people we have in our relationship, I know we are talking about romantic relationship in particular, but I think it comes down to every relationship that we have, where we need to be really choosy about what patterns are we allowing. Is that right?
yeah, I think, this kind of, I'll ask you this question. In this case, right, why do you think it's not just you? I see this pattern in myself as well. Why is it that, we are always like trying to be empathetic? We are always trying to, make the other person feel understood. We want to clarify and get to that point where we understand them, right?
Hmm.
But why is it that it's not common for us to find people who are equally curious? Why is it that it's easier for us to kind of settle for people who would stop asking us questions?
Hmm. I think it's all one thing that comes to my mind is, now that I think about it, many of us as women, we are called said to be empathetic. I think it all comes from a place of fear. Like we are scared that if we are not empathetic, that we will not get something out of it. They might abandon us, they might reject us. And it's so sad that we are so self-seeking, we are so scared that this empathy comes out, and we are not really empathetic, it's I
Yeah, so like what you're saying is kind of hitting on this point that maybe empathy is not really something that we should glorify. Empathy sounds like a trauma response. When you're surrounded by people who are emotionally abusive or neglectful, right? You develop empathy as a defense mechanism. So I show you love that I want so that you would give me the same love. So I am empathetic towards you, hoping for reciprocity, but usually, what you find is empathy never yields empathy back,
Hmm.
right? Because when you are empathetic, people assume that, okay, that's your nature. I want you. They adopt you. You're very quick to be picked by the wrong people. There's always this thing that we see, like, especially in counseling sessions, right? Where you see that the most empathetic person always attracts the most narcissistic person, and you find that they work really well together because this person loves to take and this person loves to give. And if the woman is the empathetic person, right, you will see that her body will react in a very negative way because her body doesn't feel safe, her body feels exhausted. And this in the long run leads to hormonal imbalances, it leads to other complications because your body accumulates stress over time. And I think, this is like a very uncomfortable thing for us to talk about because, this kind of makes us reflect on how we've spent so much time and energy on the wrong people and we got very little in return.
Yeah, and I think one thing I really want to emphasize from what you said to the listeners is it's it's all come we think that whatever we are doing right now, the patterns that we are allowing in the relationship, the toxicity, the abuse that we are allowing, we think that it go ends when the things end, but it doesn't really end. It shows in our body, and we carry it in the form of a disease like PCOS, hormone dysregulation, autoimmune disease. It's as a woman, we are going to carry this like for a long time until we stop this abuse, until we stop this maltreatment, like in relationships. I don't think so our body is going to cooperate at all, and I think this is something I really want the listeners to know about.
Yeah, so I think, a big sign to this is to our listeners, a big sign that you are, like being controlled by your trauma is that you self-harm by denying your own experiences. You self-harm by telling yourself that your feelings don't matter, your needs don't matter. So if this is something that you can relate to even a little bit, maybe take the time to reflect. Therapy is always an option. That is also something you could consider. But this is something that is linked to your physical illnesses as well, your physical symptoms as well. As much as we like to think that, stress is not something that's big, I can deal with it. Stress is a big deal when you look at the impact it has on our nervous system, when you look at the impact it has on our endocrine system, when you look at the impact it has on our immune system.
And I think this makes me really want to reevaluate and think about what is going on in my life, in my body, if we really want to have a healthy life, I guess.
Yeah. How are you feeling right now?
It's a lot. It's really sad, overwhelming sad, because a lot of women go through this, and we as a sort of like a mediator, we are like talking for behalf of a lot of women. And it's burdening to think that this is what women go through.
Yeah. And I think, instead of like looking for someone to fill our cup, the first thing that we need to do is like stop uh, self-sabotaging and start standing up for yourself. Start kind of living your life as if you deserve good things. It's going to be very hard. It's not easy at all. But small things like, I deserve it, right? When you start like this subconscious shift, will attract the right people in your life, because when this is something that is foundationally set right, you can't help but attract people who admire you. You can't help but attract people who want to take care of you. You get used to this. So the state, right, where when your nervous system is at rest, you feel a little bit more comfortable with actually, taking care of your secondary functions. So your secondary functions include things like creativity, include things like innovation. So you get to actually thrive and not just survive.
I think this is a good place for us to stop. And I think if
Yes.
you really, related to this content, I think I would really like your comments in our description. I mean, in our comments, and give us your feedback, how you felt. And if you like our content, do follow, subscribe, and comment everywhere, follows everywhere. Yeah,
Yeah. So we're on YouTube and Spotify. We also have an Instagram page. So
yeah,
please do share it with your friends as well. We hope to see you again next episode.
yeah. Until next time,
Bye.
ta ta.